Earlier, we talked about the need for definitions and for an understanding of grief. The guideline was that which cannot be put into words cannot be put to rest. But now we need to change the focus. So our grief guideline is, the focus of grief is not on our ability to understand, but on our ability to feel. Every behavior makes sense to the person who's doing it. Often, after a death and the initial impact, people feel quite numb. Some describe this as denial. After World War II, many veterans came back with what was known as shell shock. Today, we call it post-traumatic stress disorder. But whatever the label, it's actually our human defense mechanism which shuts down until we can marshal our resources to face the reality of what has occurred. The problem is that others often confuse numbness with strength. How many times do we hear people commend the grieving person at the time of the death for doing so well and for how strong they are? And then when a few months later the numbness wears off, and the grieving person is overwhelmed by their emotions, the same folks can sometimes compound the difficulty with their well-intentioned and yet misguided statements of, "What's wrong with you? We thought you were doing so well," implying that now the person isn't doing so well. It is vitally important to let people know that their experiences, which may include shock, lack of concentration, forgetfulness, difficulty making decisions, confusion, fatigue, apathy, and many others, are in fact natural, and there is an explanation for them. This doesn't minimize their importance, however. When we talk about grief, we need to normalize, but not minimize.
You have to be yourself. You cannot put on an act. You cannot hide what's up front in your heart. You cannot be... You just have to let your emotions flow. And everyone will be different.
When the numbness wears off, and every individual time frame is different, what many people experience can be described as being like an explosion or an avalanche of emotions and feelings. Everything seems to touch the person on the raw nerve. Emotions like anxiety, irritability, confusion, sadness, vulnerability, panic, impatience, and crying are just a few of the manifestations of grief. There can be many emotions associated with grief, and no one has a comprehensive list. I wonder what some of the emotions you have experienced might be. What surprises many people is that for a long time after the death, it still doesn't seem real to the grieving individual. Oh, we know that someone has died, but down here, we prefer not to accept it. I'll make a confession to you. For weeks after Carolyn died, I kept thinking and hoping that maybe, somehow, she hadn't really gone and that she'd be coming back. Oh, on one level, I knew that it wouldn't happen, but on another, I kept hoping that it would.
It's a very strange thing. For the first little while after she died, it felt like she was still here. I know that she had died, of course, but when I went out, I'd be thinking I should be getting home to look after her. I'd walk in the door, and it was like I was looking around for her, half expecting her to be there.
Of course, we rarely mention it to anyone, lest they think we're crazy or losing it.
I'd find myself crying in the car for some reason. I'd be driving along, tears running down my face, and other drivers giving me strange looks. There's a lot of stereotypes out there that real men don't cry. Anyway, when you lose someone you love, it makes you cry. You say that crying helps. It's a lot better to get the tears out than to live your life holding them in.
Some people will say, the person has died and you should face reality, right? Well, yes, but also no. Remember, there's a reason for every reaction. What is happening is that you cannot yet bring yourself to believe that this has really happened. It's just too painful. So we engage in the psychological task of searching in a desire to find that which is lost. We describe it as yearning, a word which means longing or desire. And it's a very important part of the grief process. How do we get from numbness to reality? My answer is one disappointment after another. We come home and half expect them to be there. But of course, when we come in, they're not there and we're disappointed. We hear the phone ringing just for an instant. Could it be? But we're disappointed. We go to the cemetery to talk to the deceased person, secretly longing that they'll respond. But disappointingly, no answer. We go to the shopping mall and just for an instant we see someone who looks like them, and when they turn around it's not them and we are disappointed yet again. Reality will surely come. As the days and weeks go by, we become increasingly aware of the reality of the loss. But how is it actualized? The simple answer is one disappointment after another. We search and do not find. We yearn, but that longing is not fulfilled. It's only after that important and often painful process that the reality of our loss can be faced. So we need to work through our feelings. The problem is that if we don't deal with our feelings, they will deal with us. And that's exactly what we worry about.
After a while, it bothered me that my grief and some of these feelings were hanging on so long. I'd go to the group, and whenever I would talk about the same thing, the feelings would well up again and repeat. I got so sick and tired of it. I'd think, when is it going to end? I believe that one day it will end, and my life will go on. But I will always miss her.